welcome to another Biddle on Saturday night. How's everybody doing? Yeah, we had our first snow Friday. Yeah. Thursday. Oh my. That was a mess. Well, we were totally unprepared for it. Thanks to the state of Pennsylvania. All right. This week we did a distro challenge of Pop OS. Hold on. Stand by. Stand by. Now, hold on one second. Somebody say something. Yeah, they can't hear you. Hold on.
What's your name? That's Geek.
All right. Now, somebody say something.
Art sucks.
All right, everybody be quiet. Everybody be quiet for a second. All right, because, yeah, that sounds better. That is very annoying. You know how annoying that is? Now, Adam, you are my witness. Did I not check the audio settings when we started?
You did indeed.
I did indeed, and I said to him, look, the green line is going up on OBS, and it's picking up my voice on both the mic and the desktop audio. I switched it to what it was supposed to be. As soon as I hit start stream, it starts picking up the mic. So annoying. Anyway, how about we start over? No, we'll just continue on. This week's challenge was Pop OS, and hopefully some of you tried it so we can have a discussion about it. All right, Adam, let's start with you.
I thought Pop OS was pretty good. It was a nice thing out of the box. I imagine it'd be better on like actual System 76 hardware. They'd have some of the integrations with their hardware. But as an OS, it's okay. I know a lot of people probably don't like Gnome, and that's probably going to be people's main complaints, just Gnome complaints. But I thought it was pretty good.
I think someone's listening back on there.
Yeah, somebody's got the stream on, playing. All right. So a couple of people in the Telegram group were talking about using it and mentioning things like not having the system tray and other things, and I don't know if I specified it last week, but I didn't say you had to use it like stock. I mean, you could have installed extensions to make it however way you wanted it, because there's, I think, 4 extensions installed by default. Let me bring my notes up here of Pop OS. So I tried to install it twice. It failed. It installed, and it didn't give me the on the GUI. It didn't give me the error code or the reason why it failed. It did give me a nice message saying, hey, I'm sorry, but it didn't work. And on the third try, it actually worked. One thing I did notice is that it does take a long time to boot up. I don't know about anybody else.
Yeah.
But it takes about 15 seconds for me to boot up this machine on Pop OS.
Wow, that's ages.
That's a long time. When everything else boots up in like 5. So the Pop Shop is pretty awesome. That's based on Elementary, but that's obvious that it's awesome because it's based on Elementary's App Center. I did note down that the NVIDIA 410 5.57 were installed by default when you download the NVIDIA image. Wi-Fi did not install the driver for Broadcom right away. I had to go into, although they do have that right in the Pop Shop in the updates part of it. So right in there, you can install the NVIDIA or update the NVIDIA when it happens. And in there, you can install the Wi-Fi drivers. Gnome Tweaks is not installed. So let me ask you guys a question. Do you think Gnome Tweaks should be installed by default?
If you're running them, of course, yes.
Yes. On all Gnome desktops, it should be by default. I don't see why you have to go searching for it.
In fact, it should be integrated into Gnome anyway.
It should be integrated. I totally agree with that.
Yes.
Yep. That is one of the extensions that they should have integrated, and they didn't. But so by default, they had 7 extensions installed. Alt-Tab raises the first window. Always show workspaces. Do not disturb. And a couple of specific ones for Pop OS for System 76, like the battery icon fix, the pop shop details, the suspend button, which is very nice, and the System 76 power. The one thing I didn't care for, terrible. I mean, it was the worst thing about the operating system. It had like single click on or double click on by default. Like, who does that?
Windows.
Okay, let everybody argue and let the argument commence about the single or double click.
Yeah, but single's always going to win because the double click are always a click behind.
See? Right? See, Dave knows. All right, Thomas, what do you think of Pop OS?
All right, so I did not get to try Pop OS for very long, although I did get to try it. When I went to install it, the first time I went to try to install it, it failed. And I think it has something to do with I accidentally clicked to go to encrypt the drive. And when I clicked do not encrypt drive, because as you click that, there's a little button at the bottom that says do not encrypt drive in case you accidentally click that. And when I did that, it crashed the installer. But thankfully, it didn't crash the entire thing, so I was able to go back and retry, and it installed perfectly fine after that. Otherwise, because I run a Gnome system, it was perfectly fine for me. I was used to it already. Let's see. The one thing I don't like, and I griped about this with Elementary OS 2, is the minimize and maximize buttons are not there. Give me the stupid minimize and maximize buttons, guys. Come on.
Well, they just
reason.
turned them off, but see, you'd have to install Gnome tweaks in order to turn them back on. Too bad it's not installed by default.
That's right.
You need to have them either on by default, or you need to have Gnome tweaks installed by default. Preferably both.
Yep.
Other than that, the only thing that really kind of got on my nerves was Control-Alt-T does not bring up the terminal.
Thank you. I wanted to mention that too.
Yeah. And I tried Control-Alt-T, I tried Super-Alt-T, I tried Alt-T, I tried everything I possibly could with just some sort of modifier and T, and it did not do it.
Can you not configure it in the keyboard shortcuts?
Oh, I figure you can. I just didn't take the time to do it because I was in a hurry at the time. So, you know, what you gonna do?
Got it.
But otherwise, if I had to reinstall, I would probably go with Pop OS because for me, there's far less configuration to do after I install to get it the way I like it. So.
Okay. Well, I thought it was actually pretty beautiful. It's a great looking desktop environment. So by default, it's that way, which is nice because I don't have to change anything when I run it. But Ali, what do you think?
I thought it was okay. It installed fine, but I only done it in a virtual machine. I didn't install it on Metal. But it installed fine. The desktop's actually quite nice. I'm not a Gnome fan. They were right. There was no real extensions apart from the ones that Pop OS, like System 76, put on themselves, which was actually quite useful because it would have been a really bland desktop without it. But it was a nice looking desktop. It ran quite quick. And the startup time, you might have had a small problem, Rocco. I don't know what it is.
What's that?
The startup time was about 4 seconds in the VM, which is quite quick.
Well,
I didn't have any issues with that whatsoever.
It may have to do with the NVIDIA drivers. I have no idea.
It may be, yeah. It might be that. Well, apart from that, no, I didn't have any issues. Everything that I wanted to install did install. No, the defaults are pretty sane actually.
For Gnome.
You know, for Gnome, yeah, they were pretty sane, which was quite a pleasant surprise because I've used Gnome before and gone, oh no. But yeah, it's really quite good. Yeah, quite impressed with it as it happens. I'd like to see it on as proper as Adam said, I believe. I'd like to see it on the hardware it was designed for because I reckon it would fly. But yeah, I did enjoy using it.
Very nice. All right, Joe, what did you think?
I could do a one-word description and go ditto to what he said, but it's really about the same. I did a VM. I just, for whatever reason, you know, I, I have a separate drive, of course, in my test laptop, so that really would have probably been a non-issue with the grub deal and all that, even though you still need to be careful.
Mm-hmm.
But so I went the VM route. I kind of chickened out there. And I did do the encrypt purposely because I wanted to see how it acted. And it only adds a couple more seconds to type your password in and then go into the login screen and then have to type it again. So that could be a little bit of a nuisance, I think. You know, I don't know. I didn't play with it where, you know, if it was on bare metal, where if you once you were in and you just suspend or whatever, I'm sure it would act probably, I would think, like any other system would, with just, you know, quick login to get back in. It does run, even for VM, it ran, like Ali said, it ran actually pretty well. It didn't seem to take that long to boot up, but that's still not a fair, you know, synopsis of it because it's not on bare metal. But although you do share the hardware that you're running, so and obviously I've got a you know nearly brand new system here. It's only several months old, so
right.
Maybe that had something to do with it. But the one thing, and this is gonna just like the single click bugs you. The one thing that bugs the dickens out of me, I wish they would get a prettier wallpaper, though. I hate that ugly wallpaper from the minute you start it up. I mean, that's something, you know, it takes 2 seconds to change, but it's still a point. It just looks kiddish to me, you know, cartoonish. But as far
Well,
as
I think the wallpaper, that's more of a taste issue because I think the wallpaper actually goes along with the rest of Pop! OS and all of the, like when you have an error and it gives you the little spaceship blowing up and everything. So I just think it goes along with everything. So, but like I said, that's just a taste.
Well, and that's it. It's little quirks that bother you. To me, double clicking doesn't always bother me. I mean, I like single click too, but there are times when it could be a pain when you want to grab a bunch of images or things like that. And I use keyboard shortcuts anyway, but you know, so I didn't spend a lot of time on it this week. I probably spent more time on Fedora because that was on my hardware. But it's not for me. I'm just not a GNOME person, even though, you know, last week I really did like Fedora. You know, is it something if I was a GNOME person or I had a system that was just minimal use type things, you know, for everyday stuff, it probably wouldn't be a bad thing, but I'm just not a GNOME person. So
yeah, definitely got to be a GNOME person if you're going to like it.
Yeah.
All right, Silent, did you happen to try it?
Well, I run it as a daily anyway, so.
Well, okay, let's talk, man.
I use it primarily because it allowed me to install DaVinci Resolve out of the box without faffing around with symlinking or anything else. I just extracted the SH installer into the terminal, installed it, job done. So for me,
what is the best thing about Pop! OS?
Is the way, I suppose, some proprietary softwares can be a bit awkward to install. And I've found so far with Pop! OS, anything I throw at it, it just installs out the box. And that for me is the win side for Pop! OS for me. The theming and the design aesthetic, you know, I'm not 100% keen on, but that's, you know, their choice and that's fine. It does fit very well. But it's what's happening under the hood that interests me the most. They do some amazing optimization to what would otherwise be a very bland GNOME experience. But the support for the software that I use is second to none. I can't praise it enough for that.
Nice. All right, Zeb, you have a different approach about the software, don't you?
I do. I did. I installed it twice. I chose the NVIDIA installation first time round, and that went sweet as, and I got everything sorted out. And then I installed OBS and, no NVENC. So I thought, what's going on here? So I jumped in the Telegram group, asked around, and Shikin said, yeah, no, it just does work. Because I don't think he tested the latest. So and he said, oh, well, what you needed to do was install the normal and then install NVIDIA afterwards. Okay, so I hosed the installation, reinstalled it again, went perfectly well, went through the typical Ubuntu NVIDIA installer, installed everything, got it all working, put OBS on, no NVENC. Now, in 2018, when Ubuntu 18.04, upon which this is based, NVENC works out of the box, what have they done to the optimization that Silent was just on about? So for me, that was a major negative, a major no-no, and why I started calling it Flop OS in the Telegram group. But if you look at the actual OS itself, I'm with Joe on that. The wallpaper, the robot theming. Really, if I wanted to be in the 1980s, I'd time warp to the 1980s. You know what I mean? I just don't like that at all. And being as it's a stock GNOME and you haven't got all those extensions loaded, you can't easily change it. So it's silly little frustrations like that. But as an OS and the way it works, and if you can get used to GNOME, it's exceptional. I think it's the best running GNOME I've ever had, apart from Solus GNOME, which I don't think you'll ever beat. But for NVENC not to work out of the box in 2018 is just shocking. But I did put a caveat to that. That just goes to prove that if you're a small operating system manufacturer, and okay, they make computers, but they've only just got into the OS world. Do they have enough system testers? Do they have enough people with enough different hardware to test is stuff working? Do they even care about NVENC? I don't really know.
Probably don't. Nobody there uses OBS or anything that uses NVENC, so it's not tested, you know.
Possibly, yeah, but you would have thought some of their system users may have been YouTube streamers. So overall, no, it gets a minus score for me. Whereas Fedora, which I'm using now, is phenomenal. So take us back to last week's show. Fedora is fantastic. 29 worked out of the box, put all the repos on, put all the software on. Next, brilliant, love it.
Except for the Bluetooth headphones.
Except for the Bluetooth headphones tonight. And that's another thing that frustrates the hell out of me with the Linux system. I can go to maybe 10 or 15 different distributions, load up the Bluetooth manager, switch on a set of Bluetooth headphones, and within 2 seconds, it will find it. Now, this system took about 25, 30 seconds to find my camera, which is switched off in the case. And I know what you said, Ali, about it. Well, you better turn it off, Zeb, because it's switched on. No, it has this thing where it's always on in the background, syncing with my phone in case I do take any photographs. So I know it picks that up, but it didn't pick anything else up that I've got in my office here. I've got 2 Bluetooth keyboards, and it didn't pick those up. So how can 15 distributions get it right and Fedora get it wrong? That's the thing that frustrates me with Linux as a whole. There's no uniformity of cohesion anywhere. Everything will have something slightly differently wrong. Why? I don't know.
I don't know, Zeb.
That's the problem when you have a community-based development of something that is open source. So you have a lot of different groups that get on board with a lot of different ideas. They branch off, and you have nothing that's industry standard across the board.
But this is Fedora. This is like based upon Red Hat. Yeah, millions of people use Red Hat for their businesses. How are they coping if Bluetooth's not working properly?
But even if you look at things like Windows, you know, you can find many Windows support forums where everyone's running the same version of the Windows, but they're all having different problems. I don't think it's necessarily an open source.
It comes back to a hardware issue too. You know, everybody's hardware is a little bit different too. And it just, I don't know. I can't explain it, but I think that's the only thing I can figure, because when you think about the amount of vast choices in hardware alone, just the lines of CPUs or video cards or whatever, the list goes on. It's like, how do you really support all this stuff and support it well? You know, now if they come down with, you know, they talk about these recommended lists, but if they came out with a line of hardware and said, this is what it works best on, matched for these half a dozen systems or whatever, and everybody built their systems around it, that would probably be a different case. But that's not going to happen in the real world.
Well, let me ask you, Zeb, did the Bluetooth work on Pop OS?
I didn't get that far, because as soon as NVENC failed, it was like, bye.
All
so
right.
I couldn't even tell you if Zoom worked, but there must be some people in the stream tonight on Pop OS, so Zoom will obviously work.
All right, Colin, What did you think of Pop OS?
Oh, look, I've run it before. I did get a chance to run it on and off during the week, but not too much. I was doing some other things, but I'm on it now. I've installed the things that I need. My needs are very small in Linux anyway, to be honest. As long as I can use Kdenlive, Zoom, Telegram, I'm happy pretty much. So, but it's nice. It's another Gnome desktop, well implemented. Theming's nice. Wallpaper, not really fussed about that, but easy to change. But you know, I mean, it's just another Gnome desktop, really. That, you know, most of the Gnome desktops are very much the same anyway, only differ slightly, I think. So once you get in the Gnome desktop, you pretty much know where everything is and how it works. So yeah, like Silent said, obviously that was good feedback under the hood stuff, and he's that DaVinci Resolve. I don't even know what that is. I've heard it thrown around a few times, but obviously that's not something that works normally on Linux, from what I know. So for it to work on Pop OS that easy and to be installed,
well, it does.
they
It's
must be
just
doing
not supported on other distros. It's primarily aimed at CentOS and RHEL.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. Okay. Yep. So that's probably a bonus for them anyway to be getting that going. So yeah, Bluetooth is another thing I'd like to just mention. Bluetooth. I mean, on a lot of distros, Bluetooth for me doesn't work, and they don't seem to have Blueman in there. Blueman seems to be the thing that gets it working most times. Why isn't Blueman installed on Bluetooth on everything, or is people implement their own Bluetooth thing? I don't know. Just probably another discussion we could have later on, but yeah, Pop OS is nice.
All right. Yeah. Bravo said that my audio is louder than everybody else's, so hopefully that I turned everybody else's up as high as it'll go. So I'm not exactly sure what's going on with that, but Tyler, you're up. What's up?
All right. Rather than I didn't try Pop OS because I recently tried it, and it, to get like others have said, it just felt like your typical GNOME distribution. I decided this last week to put Arch on my Galago Pro.
Nice.
Smart man.
Mm-hmm.
And how did that
go? So first time I booted up the USB, I realized it was going to be a bit more difficult than I had realized because I have a high DPI display. So the terminal, like, I could not read the text. I was like, I either got to find a boot option to get text to a good size to install, or I'm using a magnifying glass. But once I found that boot option, I rebooted, put that in there, and the install process wasn't too bad, just following the wiki.
And was that a very simple boot option? What was it, sort of thing?
It was like video equals and then the resolution that you want.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yep.
That's handy.
Yeah.
Install Arch enough times and you can do it from memory. You don't need to see the screen.
Why would you do that, Dave? Surely once would be a headache enough.
Savage.
Too many years of doing it, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, too many times installing Gentoo. Arch is nothing.
Yeah.
Muscle memory.
I haven't gone as far as Gentoo.
Well, I failed on my Arch install, so. Christopher, you are up. Have you tried Pop OS?
Yeah, in virtual machine. Seems okay. I like it better than Fedora. I think probably the thing is that Fedora used Wayland by default, right?
Right.
Yeah, and so this just uses Xorg, and it feels a lot smoother. It felt, whereas Fedora felt very sluggish and very like everything felt like it took just a few seconds too long. It works all right. Like I was able to get the virtual box extensions working. I tested the video. All this stuff is there. One thing I did note, I don't know if it's because of VirtualBox or not. It's just the App Store kind of froze on me once. Wasn't that big a deal, but kind of bothered me. Other than that, yeah, there's nothing. Nothing. It's just this. I don't think I'd ever use Gnome again. It's just too bare for me. It feels both too. It feels too. It feels too bare, and it also feels too heavy just on system resources. And so I think pretty much everything else just blows it out of the water. Yeah. One point somebody said, what do they intend it? I do wonder. It's intended to be basically System 76 OME install, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I wonder, like, I don't know. It feels like I don't know what like the fact that nobody has stuff might be beside the point. It's just there, so they say this is Linux.
Well, it's not that they don't test stuff. It's that they, I mean, I don't know if they have the ability to test it on every machine out there. They obviously test it on their machines and their
Right.
hardware, and they try to make it to where it's going to work on every piece of hardware out there. I mean, they're the only, excuse me, they're the only distro out there that puts out in a specific ISO for NVIDIA to make it easier for people. So they are making a lot of effort in order to get it installed on different machines.
Okay.
Well, and that goes back to the same point I just raised. There's somebody that's making a distro specific for the hardware that they carry and handle. So, if you're running it on their systems, you shouldn't be having any of these issues in theory.
All right, Scott, what do you think of Pop OS?
Well, everybody stole my thunder. covered all the issues. I like you. I liked it pretty much. My son loved the fact that Iron Giant backdrop popped up right away. Loved that. I agree that there should be a number of things evident, and readily at hand, like the tweaking, the minimize, maximize. Even though those aren't there in the file manager, you can still right-click the title bar of the file manager and get your minimize, maximize, and all that. You can also still do those with the shortcut keys, but you got to know them. You can't just readily go find a corner of the window and reduce or maximize whatnot. So yeah, that's a little disconcerting, but everybody else covered all the other points. For me, it installed quickly. It runs nicely. I test most of the OSs that were challenged with based on its intuitiveness and how easy it would be for somebody, say, new coming to Linux. And I think it's very easy to get used to and adapt to if you're new. Nothing really difficult about it. Everything works out of the box, and I think that's what new users are looking for, that it just works. And then all the extraneous or the more intricate level of tweaks and whatnot can come later as they get used to or start to learn Linux a little better, at which point they might find that they'll move on to another distro. Who knows? But out of the box, simplistic, minimalist, easy to get around. It's intuitive, and yeah, I liked it. Easy setup.
Yep, I agree. Dave, what do you think?
As an inveterate NVIDIA, I did very much appreciate them having an ISO for NVIDIA. It installed very quickly and easily. The installer, after you chose what disk it goes on, you click next and it starts installing right away. And as most of the installers having a summary page, that kind of caught me off guard. Luckily, it was not a problem. Booted up fine, loaded in. I totally forgot that it was the NVIDIA ISO until I went into the settings to turn off the screensaver and screen blanking because I hate them. And I saw NVIDIA settings and I'm like, oh, cool.
Yep.
It treated my twin 4K monitors, set them up properly right out of the box. It was really nice. I went to look for Gnome tweaks and it wasn't there, so I opened up the pop shop and typed in search Gnome tweaks and nothing. And so I took out the Gnome and tweaks and nothing. And so it was there are things I would need to go in and learn better where things are and more practice. I'll probably go back to it. I had to go back to my Arch install because I needed to update it, but it worked well. I have a setup script like DustGeek that does a lot of sim linking of my home folder and whatnot, and I tried to run that, and it said there were too many levels of sim links, and it's just going from one disk to my home drive. And the one other thing I didn't like about it was I automatically drop in a line into the etc sudoers file so that I don't have to enter my password in the terminal every time I put in a sudo command. And it wouldn't, even though I stuck it in and it was there, I still had to enter my password in the terminal every time I wanted to do something as root. So that was a little annoying, and I'll have to look further into that to see what I did wrong or what setting I need to change. But other than that, it ran smooth. It installed well. I haven't in the past been a GNOME person, so I will probably go back to it just to get used to it. But it ran nice, and it's something I will go back to, just not at the moment. I am too happy in my Arch.
There you go. Well, you don't. It's not a necessity to use all the time.
Yeah. So also, Dave, don't you find that in a lot of these software managers, they don't put stuff that tweakers would want to use? You have to go in and either use Synaptic or install it yourself, or in in other distributions, a bit like Elementary. You won't find lots of stuff in the software center. I think these distributions like to keep the software center to be their ecosystem only, and they don't want you tweaking it. So that's probably why they didn't include it.
Well, it's probably strange. I mean, because to be honest, I think it's of all the distros we've tried, I think it's only the second time I've ever actually gone into the software shop of the distro, because whatever we go into, I automatically drop into a terminal to start installing all the stuff I need and want, because it's where I'm used to doing it.
Yeah, I did notice Gnome Tweaks is not in there, and it did have to do it through the terminals.
I'm pretty sure I installed Gnome Tweaks through the pop shop.
As did I.
Nope.
Yeah.
Not there.
Okay. I don't know why it wasn't there, but it wasn't there.
I'm pretty sure it was in there, at least for me. It might be that.
Yeah, Gnome Tweaks is in there for me. I'm looking at it right now.
You must be imagining stuff again, Thomas. A bit like your Wayland works on NVIDIA.
Hey, it works. It's a good backup in case XOR does decide to go and take a vacation.
No, Gnome Tweaks is in there for me too.
Yeah.
So I think maybe sometimes I've noticed in some of these distros, they take a while to populate. If you go in there very early, it may not have been populated in there.
That
might be it.
Refresh your repos first before you open Pop Shop, and then everything's there.
I was going to say,
That
could
may
they
be
be
it.
part of the 467 updates right out of the box?
Could be.
But I do agree
Download
with
a more
Zeppo's.
recent ISO.
Okay, so Dave, when did you go look for it? Right in the beginning?
Yes. As
Maybe
soon as
that could be.
There was something I wanted to change in the settings. It isn't in the normal settings, and I knew it was in tweaks. So I went to grab that, and it wasn't there. So it probably was right at the start.
I'm probably in the same boat that I checked right away, because that's like one of the first things I installed. So maybe we didn't refresh the repos. Oops.
Very possible.
All right, Climby. This had to be better than the vanilla Gnome, right?
It is. Yeah. But before I start, where's everyone's popcorn at?
Oh my gosh.
That's what I went for. Hang on.
The first pun of the night.
But no, it's funny because I think the pop shop is the one thing I wanted to like brag about because it has worked perfectly for me. Gnome tweaks installed. It is weird that for me it's when I type in tweaks, it's the fourth result. I'm not sure why ADQ plot, Klosker, and Gnome boxes are listed above it.
I remember this.
I think they populate sooner because Gnome boxes did show up when I typed in tweaks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's a bit weird, but no, it's I've heard before that it's Gnome Gnome done right, but I would not. I still think Budgie has that title, but I would say if you're looking for an experience as usable but as similar to vanilla Gnome as possible, then I think Pop OS fits that bill. Because the tweaks they include in there don't really. It still feels like vanilla Gnome, and I really love the theme and font. I think that the default font choice is really nice, and the default theme looks really good. I did not use the NVIDIA version because I knew the NVIDIA version would not have the latest NVIDIA drivers. So I actually did get the 415 drivers installed from NVIDIA, and they work great. But I have the one negative, if I had to give it a negative, would be the not having the NVINC in OBS. That's really disappointing.
Yep.
But besides that, no, I really enjoyed Pop OS. It was functional and it just worked for the most part. The other weird thing I found, we were talking about this before, but the EF, when you try to install it through EFI and it wants a 256 megabyte free space for the EFI partition, which is kind of bizarre because usually my EFI partitions are 200 megabytes, and that's usually way more than enough. So when I saw it wanted at least 256 megs free, I'm like, well, why does it need that much space? So I made a separate 300 meg EFI partition, got it installed. And then when I mounted it, I discovered that it actually puts the init RD image, the previous init RD image, the vmlinux.efi, and the previous vmlinux.efi in there, which is, I'm not really sure what purposes those serve being put in there, because other distros don't do it. But I didn't have like it. It booted up fast for me. It wasn't slow booting up for me. So I don't know if that's like an EFI versus MBR thing or not. But
I think that has to do with the active update and the ability to roll back from a bad update. They're basically covering the bases so that you always have two images so that if the new one crashes, it can automatically roll back to the old one.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Oh yeah, the other thing I wanted to praise it for was I don't get the annoying thing in Fedora where it's like if there's updates available and I go to shut down my computer, it doesn't tell me that I should install updates. So that's good. But
nice.
Yeah, really enjoyed it.
All right, Derek. Did you try Pop OS this week?
Well, I installed it during last week's show.
Oh, that's right. You did. You did. You got it installed before any of us. So,
right. But,
what'd you think?
Well, I don't like Gnome. But that being said, I didn't like that the Ubuntu restricted extras weren't installed out of the box. I didn't like that Control-Alt-T didn't bring up a terminal because after I install something, the first thing I do usually is bring up a terminal to do whatever I want to do. And now that key binding doesn't bring up a terminal. I have to search through that annoying GNOME launcher to find the terminal. When I found the GNOME terminal too, I didn't like the font size and all that. So I want to go to the preferences in the GNOME terminal. I couldn't get the preferences to actually launch in the terminal. When you go through the menu in the terminal and click on preferences, nothing came up for me. So I don't know what's going on with the GNOME terminal in Pop OS. Positives though, no Wayland. And according to Pop OS, they don't have any plans to switch to Wayland anytime really soon. So big plus in my book on that. The machine, I put it on AMD A8. So no NVIDIA, but the lack of NVENC would prevent me from using it on my main production machine where I have an NVIDIA 1060. No NVENC means I can't use your distro. So,
Right.
Yeah.
All right, Carl.
So I tried to install it 3 times and I had 3 failures, so I gave up and I was done. I was over it.
You probably didn't. Did you not have a separate boot partition? Is that why, or did you use separate boot partition?
Yeah, I did. It was on my. I did it on my testing SSD, which has 8 partitions on it, and yeah, it goes through the whole installation, and at the very, very end, I mean, very
That's
end,
what it did
says
for me.
failed.
Yep,
So
twice it did that for me.
I re-downloaded it twice, and then kept trying it, and so I just gave up and put KDE Neon on my on my big drive, and that's my new daily driver.
Flop OS lives.
Yeah.
Stop it. Stop it.
And one thing I wanted to mention too, I know.
Well, actually, I do have one thing to say though. Everybody's complaining about the Control Alt T, and I don't understand why you just wouldn't hit Windows T Enter. That's it. And
T,
the
yeah.
terminal
Does
will
that
open.
work?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
You have to hit Windows T Enter.
No, Windows
Well,
key.
you hit the Windows,
and
and
enter.
it pops up it brings up
Super and
your,
then T.
it brings up the activities. You hit
Super
T,
enter.
terminal's the first one that always comes up, and then enter, and it opens the terminal.
That takes so much longer though. Hitting Control
way
T is
longer.
that much faster.
Right.
Well, and I think the
Yes,
other,
hitting
like,
3 buttons is faster than hitting 2.
Yeah,
And you
right.
still
Yes,
have to
because you
type
hit both of them at
terminal
the
or
same
whatever to. Yeah, I mean, you still have to do additional typing after that. It doesn't just launch the terminal. That just brings up the menu.
right? And I
No,
think the other thing
No.
No,
Super
yeah,
key
not to mention
enter
wait
brings
for
up the
Super key
terminal.
brings up the activities. And
Okay,
then
so
you hit
control.
T, and it searches immediately and brings up
Okay.
terminal, and then you hit enter. It's very simple.
Okay.
it's
Just-
fast.
Good stuff.
And is that only on GNOME that it does that?
That's one of the search features
That's-
on GNOME. I use it on KDE all the time too. Use
Yeah,
Super,
so-
and then just start typing whatever I want and enter.
Yep.
You get 3 letters in, and you're guaranteed you're getting what you want.
I'm typing console, so
Yeah, I'm usually KO and then enter. Done.
yeah, pretty much.
Apparently, in here it says that that the super key plus T is the GNOME terminal. The
That
super
does
key
not
and
work.
T.
That does not work. I tried it.
That does
No.
work. I just pulled it up.
Yeah, it
Okay.
does. For me.
Yeah, works for me as well.
Because when I tried it, it didn't work. So
Must
It
be
might be
because you're on
something to do with-
Wayland.
Do you have a super key, Thomas?
yes, I do have a super key. Thank you very much. It
Because Tyler
might-
doesn't seem to have one on his
less than
keyboards.
super.
So
It
this is
might
rag on
be-
Thomas week. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Oh,
Better than
well,
average key.
I've had a weird week as it is, having to deal with releasing a beta version. Okay, cut me some slack.
All right. So let's move on. So Nate, it's your first time here on Biddle.
It
Welcome.
is. Thank you.
Welcome.
Welcome.
And you wrote an article on your blog
did.
about Pop OS.
Well, I prefer to use the term blathering because it's a little more incoherent that way. You know, I don't expect the high standard of a blog. It's more of a blathering.
Okay. So what did you think of Pop OS? That's the important question.
So actually, what I thought Pop OS was, well, I'm an OpenSUSE tumbleweed user. That's my daily driver. I use it reliably day in and day out. KDE doesn't get all mucked up like it does for Zeb. So I like it's just a problem-free distro for the most part. So I early on in my days I was kind of between GNOME and KDE, but KDE just worked better for me. So I haven't used GNOME in a while outside of testing Fedora, and I really liked Pop OS. I thought, despite the popular opinion here, I like the artwork. I felt like it was very warm, kind of very welcoming, kind of the after shoveling the sidewalks on a cold snowy day, coming into a warm cup of hot cocoa by the fire is kind of how it felt to me, and so I really enjoyed just that experience of it, the simplicity of the installation, because OpenSUSE doesn't have. You have a lot of options with OpenSUSE, which is great, if you're you know what you're doing. So this was nice, I think, for a new user. You just plug in what you need to plug in and go. I mean, it was 4 steps to install if you're doing a clean install. I mean, something like that. I thought that was pretty great. So what I did not like, and I want to make it clear that I do think this is a fine piece of art and technology. I think that the people who worked on this really worked hard, and I want to I'm not disrespecting anything that they've done, because I think they really did a great job. So that's perfectly clear. But I'm annoyed by the activities button. Like, you have to go to that to do anything. It just doesn't work for me. I like the taskbar on the bottom. I like seeing everything that my system's doing right now. I like to see everything that's running, be able to jump between things quickly. So I don't feel like you can do that in Gnome. I know it's a Gnome thing. I feel like it's almost like an unnecessary wear and tear on my mouse is kind of how I felt. The lack of minimize, maximize, or resize, couldn't just resize it seemed like. So I think like it's fine if you only have a few applications open, it wouldn't be a problem. But I think that if you have a lot of things open, it can be a kind of a mess going between applications after a period of time, like either alt tabbing through or going to activities and kind of rooting through whatever applications are running. And I just, for me and my workflow, I just don't particularly care for that. But I do like the pop shop. I know it's, and I think Rocky told me that it was based on the elementary, if I'm
yep,
app
correct.
center. And I didn't know that. I thought it was based on Gnome because it looked a lot like the fedoras, really. But actually, I like the pop shop. It was pretty much, everything that I would, if I want to find something for very, very simple, I like it for that. But I couldn't find certain libraries, so I'm in the Army Reserves, and I use this smart card system for accessing any military websites, and so I have to have the smart card, the PCSC daemon running, so I have to have a smart card reader, and I want to test out to see if it was as easy to do on Pop! OS as on Ubuntu, and it was. So it was no problem there, but I had to do it all in terminal, or use a Synaptic package manager. But so I couldn't install the things I needed without the terminal. So you still need the terminal, if you're trying to run away from that. Not possible with Pop. But I mean, overall, really, I mean, I think it's a beautiful looking, piece of art. It really is. It's a spectacular polish. I think the software selection is very sensible. I could use it. I wouldn't like it as much, but I could definitely use it. And I don't know anything about this Gnome tweaks business that people keep talking about. I don't know what that means. I mean,
it's
cool.
the gateway to KDE-ish settings.
Yeah, see but that shouldn't be like something I have to install extra. That should just be like
Indeed.
Part of it, I would think.
Agreed.
I think that's kind of silly, but I mean, I'm not the developer. I don't have to maintain the code. So
welcome to Gnome.
Yeah, it's just to me it's just a little like I feel constricted in it. It's and I apologize if this sounds offensive, but like to me, Gnome is almost as restrictive as Windows, and more restrictive than I think Mac OS. Like I don't like Mac OS at all. Personal opinion, doesn't work for me. So it's just too. I couldn't get used to Gnome. I think that I would rather use XFCE or LXDE or even CDE from the 1990s over Gnome. But that's just based on how it works.
Well, Mate tweaks too. In fairness, Nate too. I mean, Gnome tweaks is basically turning on and off features or add-ons and things like that. And Mate to me has a lot more going for it right out of the gate. But there is also Mate tweaks in there, which is nice because if you want to change the panel layout, if you want to change different things, it is a nice thing to have in there. I think that's my opinion.
Yeah.
Although that said, I do agree with what you're saying with Gnome. It's in one breath, there's certain things that should be in there right out of the box, and then there's other things that are put in there that you think it's like why, and I don't know. Gnome's got its place for the right thing. I think it's if you're more like a touchscreen tablet type user, that kind of thing. that's where in my opinion, I think it belongs stronger, because you're right, it could wear out a mouse a lot faster. You know, or
that's a little bit ridiculous for me to say that, but you know what I'm getting at.
What's that?
It's a bit ridiculous for me to say that you're going to wear out your mouse, but you know.
No, it's not necessarily meant. You know, when you say that, nobody takes it to heart that you're literally going to wear out your mouse. It just means that there's more mouse movement that's needed.
Yeah.
To do it, unless you've got a touch screen or that kind of thing, is what I take it as. And you know, yeah, keyboard shortcuts work too, but there still is more, I think, more mouse travel that is necessary in GNOME. I don't know if anybody else agrees, than there is in most other distros.
Absolutely. Yeah. You're moving from the left-hand side of the screen to the right-hand side of the screen too much.
Yeah. And they do a great job. And like he said, for all intents and purposes, this is not a bash session on what they're doing. For what they do, their hardware, for what it is, I give kudos to System 76 for what they're doing.
Well, that's the thing. Half of the problems that we're talking about are just known. They have nothing to do with System 76. It's just upstream stuff. So now, for me, I move the buttons to the left on all my windows, like the close and minimize buttons. So I don't have a lot of screen where I'm going from right to left, because I'm using the keyboard. I'm using the super key to open the menu, start and typing, arrow keys to get on things. So I actually use the mouse less in GNOME because of the workflow than I do in other distros.
That must be a one-button click thing. Having the close and all the bits and pieces on the left of the window is just, it's not right.
No.
That's the way I prefer it.
And I keep them on the right.
I love having the buttons on the left.
I like my buttons on the right, but I also like the force on top and force lower. I like having those buttons exposed as well.
Now you got to have left-hand buttons and double click. It's the only thing that makes sense.
Yep. Left-hand buttons, double click.
Wait.
One good thing I did forget to mention about Pop! OS is that I can't remember who it was that said it was, that the installer is ridiculously quick. It's almost as quick as Solus. I mean, it's like within a couple of minutes and the thing's up and ready to reboot. So I don't know how they do it and why other distributions take sort of like 8 to 10 minutes to install, but this thing installs lightning fast.
I think they deploy some kind of an image or something. They're not like actually installing package by package. So, but I don't know for sure.
The one place where the installer bogged down for me is where it bogs down on every distro I install is I have a bunch of hard disks in my computer, and when it's cycling through to test them all before it asks where I want to install it, it has to go through and check all the different disks, and that's the only place that it's slowed down.
I turned the power button off on my 6 terabyte drive just for that reason. Whenever I boot into to try a distro.
Well, I have a 1 terabyte NVMe, two 2 terabyte drives, and then 3 1 terabyte drives.
Yeah, it definitely got to bog down.
I've got 10 externals that I have to turn off as well. It's just ridiculous.
I noticed Deepin is very quick to cycle through. It's instant on Deepin when it
I think
looks
KDE is
at the
pretty quick as well.
partitions.
There isn't a distro out there that I've seen that can go through, for me, and go through quickly. Unless, like I said, I turn a couple.
Now, wait a minute. Linux inherently is quicker than Windows. So, and now we're complaining about 10 minutes versus 2
hours.
Well, it's just easier, Joe, for me to turn the button off and restart than it is for me to wait the 10 minutes.
Well, I'm just making the point. We forget where we come from when you come to Windows, and it's 45 minutes just to initially put it on there, and that's not counting the updates. You know, where here you're doing a 10-minute install on most distros, and now we're complaining about that. It's kind of funny how we're getting spoiled. You know,
it was only 15 minutes because I installed the Windows Insider update today on my main machine, so it was only 15.
Oh, come on, Dave! Don't steal my thunder.
I think it's good for Linux users to use Windows from time to time, just to remember, because you do get spoiled. I think. I mean, you just like suspend a RAM. I mean, in Windows, bringing back up my Windows machine. I have a work machine that's Windows. Bringing that back, like it's kind of screen location roulette every time the thing wakes back up.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that I have to run Windows at work, I'm starting to think I need to have a Windows machine here just to keep up with all the changes in Windows 10.
Yeah,
You
well,
don't want to.
well,
Well, I must
Dan
just be the
Simmons.
luckiest Windows user out there because I never have all of these problems at the insiders, and I'm a Windows 10 insider. It's never wiped out my, data that everybody happened to recently. I haven't had this latest round of problems that this new Windows update has caused. So, my Windows 10 experience has always been good as long as you're not worried about letting them know everything you do.
Right?
I think it's hardware dependent largely. I mean, if you're
I
running,
think so.
My
But
biggest problem is
the latest problems were very much a fringe case because it was people who had sim-linked out most of the stuff in their documents folder, but left some of it in, so that when Windows updated, they updated the sim links, but then assumed everything in the original documents folder was no good anymore, so they just wiped it out. So they only lost part of their data. So when they had some sim linked and some not, that was the only time that people lost data.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what difference would it make if it's sim linked or not, though?
Because when it did the update, it updated the sim links, and when it went back in to wipe the old folder, it assumed everything that was in the old folder was no good anymore, including the stuff that hadn't been sim linked somewhere else. So
Well, it should be a rule: leave my home folder alone.
It should
Is
be.
that a rule?
It should be a rule. All right. Dan Simmons can't be here tonight because he's doing some real life stuff, but he did send me a message through Telegram and asked me to pass along his thoughts on Pop! OS. And he was one of the guys that actually said, hey, where's my system tray at? Why do I not have a system tray and icon for Telegram? And we directed him to the extension Top Icons Plus, which allows for the system tray to come back and you can have that functionality. But that was a real head scratcher for him to. He said basically, why would you not have that functionality put in there? So not having tweaks installed by default, he said, is very strange. But after you get all the extensions and the tweaks installed, it wasn't bad. So he's not a fan of the app launcher. One thing he finds annoying is the desktop switcher preview only shows the primary monitor. I don't know if that's something you can change, or not sure what he's referring to exactly. Let me see here. Anything else he wants to say? Personally, if I'm going to use something GNOME based, I would pick Budgie. Yeah.
Nice.
I have to agree with him a little bit about the display issue as far as the primary monitor versus the second. I don't know how many people installed it on a dual monitor system. Anybody else besides me?
I do.
Yep.
I have it installed.
All right. Just out of curiosity, I grabbed one of my long graphics that are, 3,800 wide by 1920 as a to cover both monitors with a single image, and I was using the join function, which in other distros like Linux Mint is nothing more than you select the background and choose span, and it spans both monitors. In Pop! OS, it's called joined monitors. I still ended up with two images. I mean, the same image on both monitors. They weren't spanned across both monitors. How did yours go, Rocco?
I don't span them across. Plus, mine are both different resolutions, so it might not work right that way. So I just usually leave it as one image.
To be honest, I don't think I've ever found a distribution that can span images correctly across monitors. The worst scenario is this, which is when I say, okay, this is a nice wide picture, span, and then it ends up filling up my center screen, and then two little bits on either side of the other screens that are there. So I tend not to look at that anymore. So,
See,
what kind of
see, I've
like a
got two
background?
monitors that are exactly the same. Yeah, background image. I've got two
okay.
Acer monitors. They're the same resolution. I use span. It's flawless. I mean, all of my images are 3840 by 1920. There's no pixels at either side. I mean, it's just in Linux Mint, it's worked flawlessly.
Weird.
Well, that's
I
good.
like different things on different monitors.
It's nice when the distro will do that, but GNOME is not one of them.
KDE does that.
Yes.
KDE does that. XFCE does that, but GNOME does not. So.
Hey, is that Michael wearing a mask tonight?
No. That's not Michael, because he would have said tuxdigital.com.
By now, yeah.
/
Paul, you got your audio on?
Yeah, I got my audio on.
All right, so did you try Pop?
I installed it and I found out it was GNOME, so I uninstalled.
Hey, that's an honest answer there.
So.
Yeah, that's cool. We know you don't like GNOME, brother.
What's our GNOME tally up to?
Yeah, there's a few people that don't like GNOME. And Michael is here after a few weeks of absence.
Yeah.
How are you, man?
Just fine, man. It's been a lot of work, so I haven't been able to join for the last couple of weeks or so.
Well, it's good to have you back.
Thank you. Is my audio fine?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
Very nice. Yeah.
So, did you try Pop or what?
Yeah. This week I had a kind of a distro bonanza or something. I went through Pop OS, Fedora 29. I tried Deepin. Then I thought, well, why not switch it up a little bit? So I tried Arch, and then for some stupid reason, I tried Gentoo. And man, that thing is evil. Jesus Christ, I will never touch that again.
Did you do command line install or use calculate?
Command line, always command line. So yeah, okay. So Pop OS. Well, it's yet another GNOME distro. Nothing special. I mean, I enjoy GNOME just as much as any other DE. I'm not that particular with any specific distro. I make do with any one of them. And with the desktop environments, I'm adaptable, so no problems. But yeah, it worked. Everything was nice. No problems. It's all fine. I had that same problem as some of you other guys had with the software center. When I was searching for stuff, it didn't show up at first, but it came later on. So I guess you have to update the repos properly for everything too. I don't have that problem in for example, none of the others. Ubuntu, Solus, it's right there from the beginning. And yeah, no problems. I gamed. I used tried Kden Live. I tried what's the other one? Oh, I forgot the name. Never mind. No problems. Everything was good. Fine. I have no complaints. As I said before, just another GNOME distro. Nothing special to me. Looked fine. So yeah.
All right. Well, I believe it is John in the chat said, "What exactly do people not like about GNOME? Someone please give me more details." So, what is it about GNOME, Derek, that you don't like?
I think the biggest complaint most people have is they keep removing functionality that they had in their desktop environment previously. So,
all right, that's one reason.
I would say that it's clunky. It's you can't do. I mean, nothing seems very fluid in it. Everything is you have to.
Someone's monitoring the stream. Exactly.
Yeah,
can you mute the stream, Pete?
You check if your audio on the stream is playing.
I don't think that's audio on the stream. Somebody's got speakers that are getting picked up by our mic.
Yeah. Who's got their speaker on?
All right. I'm not sure whose it is.
Is it mine?
Mine's been on.
No,
that's not yours, presenter. It seems to have gone now anyway.
But,
all right.
Anyway, for me, it's the extra clicking, having to go around. There's no way to customize it. I like to mold things to the way I want it to be for me. So it just Gnome just doesn't fit that bill for me.
And for me, I don't like that activities button. You got to go into activities. And it just.
Well, it's not, obviously it's not for everybody, but so we have the customizable, the functionality being taken out. We have the clunkiness. Anybody else want to say why they don't like Gnome?
Or it's
It
the
uses
workflow.
more resources than it really needs to.
Yeah, it's very heavy
In terms of memory.
Yeah.
Yeah, performance is the
CPU.
only real complaint I have about Gnome.
It's not a very intuitive workflow either.
Yeah.
The desktop environment itself is not very intuitive.
See, I like the workflow. I've always liked it. I used it for like 2 or 3 years, and now I make my KDE workflow exactly like Gnome.
But I do the same thing, Carl.
It's very
yes, I have my hot corner up in the corner and everything, and I
So
never,
my,
I haven't clicked the activities button in I don't know how long.
So my
I usually
primary
remove
setup-
it by an
On the corner
extension.
or hit the super key.
Okay,
So-
Carl, I have a question for you then. When are you going to do a video on it?
Never.
So, Plasma setup has, it looks like Gnome, but it functions more like Unity. I have the title bar integrating with the top panel when I have a maximized window, and I also have the global menu set up.
I almost hate to say it, but KDE is a lot more like Windows than Gnome is.
Yep, I agree. Or but at least by default, it is.
So you know, those coming from Windows who are there for a long time are more comfortable with KDE. It's just the workflow makes sense to them.
Yeah.
Those that have spent time in Gnome, usually who have spent a couple years there, are comfortable in that and then feel weird or just like they're a traitor going back to anything that resembles the Windows paradigm.
But here's the thing: getting back to Pop OS, and since we were reviewing that distro, are they catering to Windows users? I mean, the System 76 machines are Linux machines at Mac prices, so they're probably catering more to the Mac crowd.
Well, I think, to be honest with you, they're catering to themselves. They wanted an operating system that matched their hardware specifics, and they obviously looked around at everything that was out there and said, you know what, let's take this Ubuntu Gnome as a base, and then we'll build it around what we want. Because you say they are a Linux manufacturer, so are they really trying to? I don't think I've ever seen any advertisement on their sites that says, hey, if you're a Windows user, come and buy a Linux 76 machine. It's going to be so much better. And the same for the Mac. They are just a pure hardware manufacturer who's giving what they believe to be the best software for their hardware.
And System 76, their hardware certainly has the capacity to run Gnome without any issues at all. It's not like it's even going to put any strain on the hardware they're putting in their systems.
And to be honest with you, it's only people who continue to insist upon 15-year-old pieces of hardware that have problems with it. I mean, most computers nowadays will be a sort of i3 minimum with 4 gig of RAM, and that's fine. It works.
I still run multiple Core 2 Duo machines with KDE on OpenSUSE, and they run great.
We've gotten spoiled. I mean, that's the problem, Zeb, is we've gotten spoiled Linux being able to run these ancient machines. We expect it. I mean,
yeah, but I mean, 15 years later, come on.
When it comes to memory usage with Gnome, the one thing I've noticed, especially with Ubuntu, I think they've implemented well. I don't know whether it's heavy because people believe it's heavy, but a lot of things in the system is indexed already. So it does run quick, because if you do a search, it'll search the software center, it'll search all your files, it'll search anything within the settings as well. And it gives you a lot of choices when you search, especially the Ubuntu Gnome. I think they've done that really, really well. If you look at Pop OS, it does not search files, I don't think, and it doesn't. I think it does search the software center, but I'm not sure about settings.
It does search the software center.
I think part of the problem with Gnome, though, is it does put all that stuff into RAM so that it's faster access. The difference is on modern computers, the difference in speeds with the CPUs have gotten fast enough that you don't need to put everything into RAM to get a quick response anymore.
Yeah, but to be
Right.
honest with you, Dave, for RAM usage, comparing Gnome to KDE, there isn't that much difference on my machine.
After a few minutes, right?
I mean, like I know that Gnome will run around 1.5, 1.8 RAM for me because I have 16 gigs, so it's going to take up some. But on the KDE install, I will still run 1.5, 1.6.
Yeah. And if you're going to open up a web browser like Chrome or Firefox, it really doesn't matter what desktop environment. It's going to take up a ton of RAM. Just the minute you open a web browser. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
It just slowly gets
sure.
more.
It's all relevant to the amount of RAM you have too. I just opened up HTOP, and right now, with having Zoom open and the pop out window from Google and all this, I've got multiple resources going, and I'm pulling 3 gigs on a 16 gig machine. So depending on if you notice, if you got a machine that's only got a couple of gigs, it's going to pull probably 500 something megs, 600 megs, or whatever. I doubt that it's going to pull a full gig.
All right, I kind of feel bad because I'm running KDE and I'm running 6.5 gigs of memory with like 6 different programs open and Zoom and multiple terminals and multiple chats.
At the moment, I'm running 1.3 gig. Exactly.
I'm running 2.5.
Yeah, I feel like half the stuff I run are Electron apps, so I can't really, what you gonna do?
Is
was your
applications applications set to run a percentage of RAM these days? Because it seems to, like, the more RAM you got, the more it uses. The less RAM you got, the less it uses. It seems to be the case. I'm not sure.
So I know KDE is set up that way. I don't know about the latest. I know they've made tweaks in Gnome. What is it? 3.30.
Yeah,
that just came out.
Yeah. 3.30. Yeah.
I know they made some optimizations in that. I don't know. I think that's one of them, but I know KDE's been doing that for the last couple iterations.
Yeah, it's definitely running. It's running slimmer. It definitely is in Ubuntu anyway.
Right now, I've got 16 gigs of RAM in the system, but I've got Chrome running, Zoom running, the software, the Pop Shop open, and the NVIDIA control settings, and I'm using 6.60 gigs of RAM right now.
Now I'm running the stream. I got 2 Chrome windows open, OBS, a couple other programs, Zoom running, and I'm running at 7.7 gig.
See, I am running Zoom, of course, and then Telegram, Discord, and the pop-out chat and Firefox, and an 8 gig system, and I'm taking up about 4.4 gigs. So
there you go.
This
I
is
don't know
all
what
in
you guys.
Pop OS. This is all in Pop OS, right?
Yeah, I'm on a bunch right now.
On mine.
No,
I'm on
but I do have Gnome going, so
In that case, I won't tell you guys what all I have going. I actually have 16 Chrome windows open. I have that's Google Chrome.
That's
I
all
have
you need to say.
Chromium open with 8 windows. I do have this going. I have the YouTube going for this show, but of course I've eliminated the video portion. Got the Zoom going. I have the virtual machine for Pop OS going. I'm using 8.2 gig.
Geez, that's pretty good. What system are you running?
That's really good.
What do you
Linux
want?
Mint. Linux Mint 18.3.
Which one? Which desktop?
Mint or Mate, sorry.
No,
Yeah,
Mate.
with the it's the Mate with the 4.15 kernel.
Yeah, that's what I'm basically running. I'm about with with 1804 and the 4.15.39, I think, or whatever is kernel in it.
Yeah,
So
not to mention
that's what
I'm running.
saying, Gnome is probably by default inherently a little more resource hungry. But again, it's like what you said is it's because it's doing more caching and searching of everything at one shot. And the other thing too is we're all talking about what we have open, but like I've got, even though it's not open, if you have Telegram started, even though you haven't opened the window, it's still in the background. There's a lot of other things that are still running. But I did notice, even when I look on different machines with different amounts of RAM or different things, and I've checked, especially that laptop in there, it's got 8 gigs, and typically I'll run 1.2, 1.7 in that if I've got resources going, things like that. So, and it depends on the distro that's running in there. Now, when I ran Fedora 29, I didn't do a systems check like this recently, but I remember when I first loaded it, I did, and it didn't seem to be running nearly as heavy as everybody's indicating tonight. But again, I wasn't running all that's being run right now, in fairness.
Yeah, see, it's got a lot to do with the background resources too. I mean, obviously, we didn't mention everything, but I've got Cairo Dock on one monitor. I've got Docky on another monitor. I have the 3D cubes running with 6 virtual desktops all running at the same time. I have Station running and Mind Time running. There's a lot running, but it seems like Mate handles resources much better. I've really not had a lot of issue with it. And this is not a top of the line machine. It's a gigabyte machine, AMD processors. It's not what you would call a golden child by any stretch of the imagination, but it does well. So,
well, since I'm not actually using the machine that Pop OS is on, I've got nothing running on it. So it's using 1 gig of the 4 gigs of RAM in that machine with me not actually doing anything on it. That's kind of
pretty
high.
much that's normal.
Yeah,
That's
It
normal.
seems a bit high to me.
Yeah.
But
I really want a good comparison.
When you run like I reckon Ubuntu does it right. The only thing that like when you hit the Windows button and you start searching for things, you can find them pretty easy in Ubuntu. That is a good working paradigm for me anyway. That's the way I like to work. But the simple things that they're missing is show desktop. And little things like that the average person that jumps on that system would probably be looking for. So
System tray?
System tray is another one. Yeah, well, it is. System tray is something that people probably rely on. So, I mean, and I quite often wonder when people do come from Windows and try these things, is that what they're looking for? Because I don't know, you never get that sort of feedback from the average Windows user.
You see, I must be weird then, because I don't think I have ever hit show system desktop for a reason. Why do you want to go back to your desktop? Are you one of these people who saves 54,000 documents on your desktop?
On the desktop. You have a Carl Schneider wallpaper that you want to look at.
And therefore
Right,
it slows
right.
down. My peppermint logo wallpaper is always on one of my monitors on the left, and I never run things full screen because I want to be able to get quickly to the stuff that I want. So it's all about what you think you should have normally. And the beauty of Linux is, okay, it hasn't got to show desktop. 2 seconds later, you've added the extension, so you have got it. So you could end up with a system that would have 44 extensions because you've got 20,000 users, want a different one each. You have to make a decision. But that's the beauty of Gnome. Within 10, 15 minutes, you can have a system, not the beauty of Gnome, the beauty of Linux. You can have a system configured the way you want it to.
I think you had it right the first time, the beauty of Gnome.
I think the other thing too I've noticed is, for example, so much of Gnome is so tightly integrated. For example, I've never used the Evolution email client on Pop OS,
Neither have
but
I.
running right now in HTOP, you have the Evolution data server, the Evolution calendar.
You can't get rid
the
of it.
Evolution address book, and you can't get rid of it because
Right.
it's so tightly integrated into GNOME. So even if you're not using a lot of the GNOME applications that are built in, you can't really remove them, and they're always running. So that's another part of it.
That's an issue.
The one thing that I think
Go ahead.
The one thing I think that they have going for them with Gnome is if you're coming from Windows and you're thinking, I want to try Linux, and you're going to look for a computer that has Linux already installed, you're going to expect it to have a different desktop than both Windows and Mac. And when you're thinking a popular desktop in Linux that has a different desktop layout by default from both Windows and Mac, the one that immediately will jump to mind is going to be Gnome. Like, of course, we have like Pantheon and all these others which have different layouts, but Gnome is the most popular one. So if you have these people who are going to try Linux coming from Windows or Mac, and they may have friends who run Linux and they know Gnome. Like, if you run into someone in the Linux community who does not know something about Gnome, who are you? Like, where have you been?
But that's not. It's not popular because people chose to run it. Usually,
Right, it's just Gnome.
Ubuntu installs it by default, so naturally, being the most popular distro, most people run GNOME. But it's not like
Yeah.
You know, but they went out of their way to get that thing.
Yeah,
No,
absolutely.
Thomas,
But if you're-
where I get where I disagree with you a little bit is most people coming from Windows are going to look for their typical workflow of
absolutely
button on the bottom. You know, so
Absolutely.
that's where Mint and Katie, you know, where Kubuntu and those types of
but if you're
are going to suit them. But if you're starting with somebody on Linux as a fresh look, because I'll never forget, I had sold a used refurbished laptop, or excuse me, desktop that I refurbished, and I put Unity on it. And it took, this girl must have called me a dozen times in the first 2 hours of dropping it off over there. How do I do this? And I told her, I said, just be patient, take your time, try, you know, I walked her through things. Finally, I went over there and sat there with her for an hour and a half to walk her through to show her. But then once she got used to doing what she needed to do, she loved it. But it's the change. I mean, even for mine right now on Monte, I always had the same kind of workflow like Windows. Now this looks more like a Mac with the Cairo dock on the bottom and the taskbar on the top. And I'm so used to this now. You know, I absolutely love it. I wouldn't go any other way.
I'm just saying, if somebody's coming and just they're coming to Linux on their own, and they decide, because I know that people have done this, if they decide they want to get a new computer that's already running Linux, System 76 is one of the most likely ones for them to run across because it's their most popular, like, OEM Linux vendors. And if you have people that you're going to who are also running Linux for help, they're going to at least know how to help you because it's known. Whereas if you're running some other weird thing, they may not. Now, of course, if you're running Linux Mint, they'll know how to help you because it's Linux Mint. It's basically Ubuntu, just heavily customized for people coming from Windows and to be easier for the noob in Linux, or, you know, elementary OS, which again is very similar to Ubuntu. They're not exactly the same. They're similar. It's just in this specific case.
All right, but in fairness, then putting it that way, the way you said it, if
Yeah.
somebody's going to go to System 76, by then they're going to probably have done at least some sort of research and looked at to see what it is that's being offered, and probably checking into it a little bit more upon making their purchase. It won't be this preconceived notion that, hey, I'm going to go in there and why isn't it working like my old Windows is? So in that case, I'll give you that much. But I mean,
at least they started reading the manual.
Yeah. I don't think a new Linux user is going to buy a System 76 machine anyway.
Yeah,
like their
exactly.
desktops, starting price for their desktops, like the cheapest thing you can get is like $1,200. And of course, they go up several $1,000s more than that. That's not somebody that's just going to buy that thing and not know anything about Linux.
No, they'll look at something like
Right.
that.
That's somebody
Well,
buying for a workstation, right? Somebody that already knows what they're doing.
No, but
Yeah,
it could be someone just purchasing purely for the hardware specs alone, irrespective.
Yeah, and then putting Windows on it. Possibly.
I think
Well, see,
Cinnamon
the other-
has the best like as far as Windows workflow or geared around that. Cinnamon has it nailed.
Yeah. And second only to Cinnamon would be dang it,
XFC.
I was gonna say Zorin Desktop, but XFC is really close too.
Yeah.
Budgie has a similar workflow, I believe. Budgie would. Budgie's got a like a Windows-ish type
Most
of
LXDS,
most of the desktop environments today have a Windows-ish.
Yeah.
Except for GNOME or the Deepin maybe. Most of them have that windowed paradigm.
And I think as far as the OS 10 paradigm, I think the closest thing to it was Unity with the global menu. And because even in Mac OS, usually the dock's on the bottom, but I've seen many people in Mac OS put their dock on the left side. So
Yeah, the global menu in Unity was great. There's other global menus out there, but I don't know if anybody really nailed it the way that Ubuntu did in Unity.
Yeah, that's the one thing after Ubuntu got rid of Unity that on GNOME I miss. If I could find an extension which gave that back to me, I would install it in a heartbeat. Especially if it was faster than what.
Doesn't Mate have something like that?
Hey, I was just going to say, go right to Mate and change it and have the Unity stuff.
And Ubuntu Budgie's got a lot of, what do you call them? The things that you put down. They've got a lot of extension type things now in Ubuntu Budgie. Applets, that's the word I was looking for, that you can add to the global menu and all sorts of things. So they're doing a lot of work on there as well. And just getting back to the show desktop, I'd like to explain myself about that as well. If you look at 90% of Windows users, maybe even more than that, they got icons spread all over their desktop all the time. And that's the reason why I probably say that, because every time I have a look at someone's or fix someone's desktop that's running Windows, they're just icons everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
I don't have one icon on my desktop, really, unless it comes by default. I probably won't turn it off. But, you know, I'd have to think that people coming from Windows would want to put icons on their desktop. That's the only
That's
reason.
because what they don't understand when they're running Windows is that for every single icon you have on your desktop, you have Windows polling saying, is that a valid icon? Can I connect to something if somebody clicks on that? So if you've got 100 icons on your desktop, you've already used 15% of your computer's power while it continually checks, is that a valid icon? And it does this all day long in the background. And I proved it to someone. I created for them a little folder called X Desktop, put every single icon that was in their desktop, and then created them a clickable toolbar that says, show me the X Desktop. And their system ran so much better. And I didn't clean it. I didn't do anything other than take icons off the desktop. So I don't know whether Linux suffers the same thing. I've never read anything about it continually having to check whether that shortcut is working. But on Windows, stuff on your desktop is a no-no.
I don't think it does that, but I don't think it affects it, because if you think about it too, what you just said, typically after a while, Windows will say, hey, do you want to clean up the icons on your desktop? Well, Linux has never done that.
Yeah. Like Linux will show you anything in the desktop folder, whether it's valid or not. So
yeah, you're absolutely right. But it's funny because one of my favorite features of Windows 10 was that you could actually disable the desktop icons, and you couldn't do that before in Windows.
You could. I've done that before.
Yeah. It's been
Well, I mean, it would. You could remove all the desktop icons, but if something installed something as a desktop icon, it would automatically place it there. Whereas in Windows 10, it just won't. The icons are in the desktop folder, but it won't show anything.
No, I was able to do that on Windows 7, 8, and 8.1 before. The right click and the turn the desktop icons off. I've always done that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's been there since Vista.
Most people don't know about it, so that's why.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
All right, so there was a couple questions in the Telegram group that kind of go right in hand with what we're talking about here. And one of them, we'll start with Kim Krause. He had a question, and he asked, what is a modern-looking distro? Because we talk about it all the time, okay? A distro that does it like, hold on, Thomas. A distro that does it like it's always been done with some new fancy theming, or a distro that completely redefines the desktop experience. What do you consider a modern-looking distro?
Plasma.
Okay.
Deepin.
This, I would say it's subjective.
Or Deepin.
Because, like, for me, a modern-looking desktop is going to be, like, let's take Gnome, for instance, because we were just talking about that, and it's what I use. The bar across the top, I always try to get that so it's just flat black background on that, and then the dock to dash, I give that a flat black background. I turn off all animations, and I'm happy, because for me that is a more modern desktop, because it's not as resource intensive. It's what I know I like, and it looks better to me. Of course, somebody else I know will want the complete opposite. They're going to prefer a more light theme. They're going to prefer their animations. Other people aren't going to like Gnome at all. They're going to prefer KDE, for instance, or they may prefer a more, stock sort of Mac OS experience.
But I guess the deeper question is, do you think is a modern-looking distro to you the way it's always been done and just fancy theming, like you're talking about? You're changing just the theme, or are you thinking that it's something that completely changes what we're used to?
I prefer something that completely changes it, personally. That's why I use Gnome, because I came from Windows initially, and I hated Windows the way it was laid out. It was so cumbersome for me. And when I came to Linux, initially, the OS I was using was called Ubermix. And I hated that too, because it was way more like a gaming console, and it was not meant to be a gaming console at all. And then when I finally came to Ubuntu, Unity just worked for me. I had to do some changes here and there, and as a new Linux user, it was a pain in the butt to learn how to do that on my own with Stack Exchange, and not knowing what Stack Exchange even was. But once I did that, it's changing for me what I like. Now, of course, that's going to be different for everyone. It's subjective.
Yeah, because for me, it has nothing to do with the layout. It's all how crisp and clean the icons and the fonts and the rendering is. So it's much more the theme quality than the layout of where everything is and how everything's put together on the desktop.
Yeah,
I do think a lot of Linux users are looking for a different workflow than Windows. When they come over, I mean, they're looking for a complete change. They're not just looking to just get away from Windows because of privacy and security. Some of them just want a clean break. They want something totally different. I've heard people say that. That's why a lot of people start looking at things like i3, for example. You know, they want something completely different than that old Windows paradigm they were used to.
Mm-hmm. I think Thomas summed it up right at the beginning. It's just subjective. For me, someone saying, "Oh, use this OS because it's got a modern desktop," is like saying, "I'm a power user." What's a power user? Yeah,
Somebody who uses two clicks.
Yes, exactly.
The WIMP
It's hard to
environment.
say what a modern desktop is, isn't it? I mean, is it modern as far as like you use Gnome, but somebody changes Gnome to something a little bit more modern? Is that what you think it is? It's more modern from your perspective, or I mean, I was watching a video from Linux and other stuff. He was looking at Voyager. Now, I don't know if anyone's aware they've changed from XFCE to GNOME. Is
biggest
anybody aware of
mistake
that?
ever. Biggest mistake ever.
But if you have a look at some of the changes they've made to the GNOME desktop, they haven't been afraid of doing some different things in the GNOME environment. So
which is exactly why they had the best XFCE implementation out there. Some of his little scripts he had running on his desktop to open up multiple different types of terminal were fantastic. But you can have a distribution.
But you still got those things that he had in the shortcuts in the desktop, but it looks like he's integrated them like in the top bar. And also he's still got the box thing, the Voyager box thing as well, Conky on the desktop and that. I think there's a few things missing. I have to have a look at it, but are they trying to modernize it? That's the question I'm asking, or
here's a question for you then. Is Pop OS, would you class Pop OS as a modern looking desktop?
Yes, I would.
Yes.
Yeah, I would.
What, with that 1960s wallpaper? Really? That's the first thing that hits you. 1960s. Hello, robots. Not being a robot.
Yes, but it's retro.
Everybody
It's
has
retro.
their own definition of what modern means.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think it's partially both, a little bit of everything. It's partial theming, because you don't want a theme that looks like it's Windows 95, okay? But it's not just theming. You want, I think, being a modern-looking desktop includes having modern features that you want to see, like applets in the system tray that give you certain features, or extensions installed to allow you to do this or that. You can go back to the older Linux systems and see what you were able to do before and what you're able to do now comparatively, and you can see some of the modern features. That, to me, is what makes a modern desktop.
Okay, it's a quick question then on aesthetics and the way things look like, yeah? Square corners or round corners on your windows?
Yes.
Round.
Single click, double click. It's subjective.
It is definitely.
I would honestly have to say, if we have to quantify what a modern desktop is, it would have to be
It's never going to happen.
Next step.
I would say there's one way, and that would be, as Rocco said, using modern features, but I'd also have to say using modern code. And when I say modern code, I mean, like, it is common knowledge that when you're making anything out of software, you want it to be made out of C, C++, or something like that, low level, to make it go as fast as possible. Now, that's not always possible to do due to whatever you're needing. Okay, I get that. But if you are able to make a desktop out of C or C++, do it, because your desktop will run significantly faster. Just out of the simple fact of the matter that C++ runs faster than, say, Python or
It depends on
Bash.
it depends on what you're trying to get out of your desktop. I knew
say,
you were going to bring up Python.
Tell that to the budgie guys.
Yeah. I knew you were going to bring up Python. The window manager I'm using right now is 100% written in Python. It does what I needed. Now, I'm not asking it to do much. It's a tiling window manager, but
and don't get me wrong, I love Python. I'm a Python developer. Python is great. It's fast. But if you're needing specifically speed,
yeah, you have to go low level.
I mean,
now,
it depends on what you're trying to get out of it. It depends the use case.
Right. But that being said, if you are able to do what you need to do in another language, and if you use that other language and you can implement features easier in that language, by all means, use it. For example, let's say you make a desktop in solely Python. I would dare say that you would be able to integrate Mycroft with your desktop much easier because Mycroft is written in Python. Let's say you make your desktop in JavaScript, like Gnome is vastly. Okay?
No, that's not okay. That's a step too far.
Okay. I was going to say it's going to be slow, but for like people who are web developers, for instance, they'll at least understand what the code is.
Well, to go to the point of the code itself, you don't have to look any further than to look at Solus if you want to look at a modern distro in the back end of it, because it was streamlined to basically just cut down and started over and streamlined to be modern fast desktop. Now, I don't run Solus exactly because of the software issue, but you can't go any further than to say that's a modern desktop.
The thing is that the UI and aesthetics aside, because that is very subjective, the WIMP environment was solidified many, many years ago. And to break out of that paradigm is very, very difficult because you're always going to have that very similar Windows-esque, taskbar, Windows, etc. look. So it's if you can either go tiling, i3, things like that, DWM, to break out of that paradigm slightly, but it's still using a workspace mentality. So I think, to get a modern desktop is a very, very hard thing to achieve because that core fundamental basis of what makes a desktop environment, it was solidified 30 years ago.
So we're not actually going to have a full modern desktop until we actually get beyond the point of needing physical monitors.
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah,
I would guess
that sounds like it. As long as our programs are actually in Windows. Yeah.
That's the question. Talking about the question in hand, though, what does this person mean by modern? Is it aesthetics or is it functionality?
He was asking you
our opinion on.
What's your opinion, Joe? Is it aesthetics or is it?
No, for me, it's a little bit of both, actually. And it's like, it is exactly like Thomas said, it's subjective. So, bottom line, we've heard Mate, which is my baby, that thing, it looks like it hasn't been changed in how long. So what do? You retheme it, you make it look the way you want it. So, from an aesthetic standpoint, that's almost a moot point. It's more on what I'm thinking, like you're discussing here, is the functionality and what you can do with it. And that's, to me, what makes it more modern is the ability of what you could do now, what you couldn't do before.
See, that's one thing that is happening with more modern desktops is that they're becoming more transparent to the user. And that should be the case. A desktop environment shouldn't intrude unless it absolutely has to.
Yeah, I would argue that all of the Linux desktop environments are getting more modern. I mean, you can even say XFCE, and they added the Pulse Audio applet into their system tray, which they never had before, which gives you way more functionality than it did before. That is what I call going into being a modern desktop, giving you those types of functionality. So I would think every one of them, now you have your slider bar can go all the way up to, say, deep in, where, that's way modern. Okay, that's like to the point edge of,
that's
wow, that's so different we wouldn't use it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, but they're trying different things though. They got the the settings bar on the side and all that. But the other thing is, we talk about modern, talk about wallpapers, Pop OS. All right, a few people didn't like the wallpaper in Pop OS. Fair enough, that's subjective. But the thing is, you can look at Elementary and everyone says it's beautiful. It's got a beautiful desktop. It's got beautiful wallpaper. It's consistent across the board, but it doesn't print. We all had problems with printers, right? So is that modern or it's not modern? That's not modern.
I think that speaks on the development team. Elementary really focuses on aesthetics, where I don't think Pop OS, those devs don't really. They're focused more on the back end stuff,
Yep.
But
Modern
I'm just
has
saying,
a lot to do.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's about definition, because everybody's got a different definition of what modern is. We all know that what's trending to some people is what they call modern. We also know that the human brain is capable of absorbing enormous amounts of information, and some people recognize modern to mean how much information is readily at my eyeballs' fingertips. How much can I absorb easily across my device, whether it's a computer screen, a tablet screen, or a phone screen? Modern to them means how much information that's useful to them can be absorbed instantaneously. And that's got a lot to do with functionality, intuitive of the display, how our brains register that information, or uses that information. So definition of modern covers a gamut of variation.
Precisely.
Yep.
Yeah,
I think so.
I can sum up modern in just about a sentence. KDE Plasma Breeze Dark theme, and that's modern enough for me. Because I can mold and shape it to anything that I need. And that, to me, it's important. If you can shape it and make it as efficient as possible for you, that's modern, because it's the computer's conforming to your needs. You're not conforming to the computer's needs, which is why I think that desktops that are limiting you, not naming names,
not naming Gnome at all.
No, not naming Gnome.
I think that like whatever fill in desktop. I think that to limit a user on what they can do, I think that's an archaic paradigm, because when I hop on my Commodore 64 and I use Geos, there's not a whole lot I can do with it. So that's not modern to me.
Well, you talk about KDE and you talk about the Breeze Dark theme, and I'll go back to the features and the functionality. The Breeze Dark theme is a part of the modern desktop.
I've always wanted a dark theme before it was cool.
But to me, things like KDE Connect are what make KDE modern. And it's the functionality that it gives you that you never had before. And this is all brand new stuff that you could never do before, and now you can. That to me is what makes it modern.
Well, that's extensibility, isn't it? That's catering for modern device usage as well. So the more desktops align with how you live your daily life, that's where it becomes more modern.
The home computer's had an identity crisis since the late 90s, and it's going to continue to have an identity crisis, I think. And I think it's going to constantly change and shift and morph into what it needs to do to be the right tool. And
it will have to. It has no choice now.
Personally, I've
never had a choice.
I agree more with Rocco on the extensibility kind of thing. We have such modern devices now. We're so connected now that it is much better to have, for instance, your phone or tablet be able to communicate with your laptop or desktop. And as a Gnome user, I am somewhat envious of KDE users for having KDE Connect, because while there is kind of maybe something out there that can do that for Gnome, it's not going to be as good as KDE Connect.
It's not.
And the closest thing I have to being able to do that is literally TeamViewer on my phone. And that's about the best I got.
So thing is, KDE Connect is GS Connect. It still uses the KDE Connect backend. It just provides a front end for Gnome to use it.
But then that's
going to probably take away features.
KDE. So
it does not have the functionality that KDE Connect has.
Well, it probably never will.
It doesn't have all the framework behind it.
Yeah. So
I totally agree with what Nate said. I think he's nailed it, to be honest, just about, which is, you want to have the desktop the way you want to have it. And if they continue to take those things away and just have just you use the desktop the way it comes, I think if you can shape and morph it into what the way you want, I think KDE, to be honest, and I'm starting to warm to KDE a bit because, you know, you can change menus, you can install wallpapers all from within the GUI rather than go searching the internet for it. And it has all these options. And yeah, I have to think it is becoming a modern desktop.
Yep.
You can change it to suit what you want it to be. It doesn't have to be like Windows. It can be like Unity. It can be like Gnome. It can be like anything. So when you think
like
about
I said before, my KDE Plasma configuration is it looks like Gnome, it functions like Unity.
Yep.
Okay, so the question nowadays...
Did that not take an entire rewrite of the code between KDE 4 and KDE 5 for them to achieve all that they have achieved with Plasma?
Yes.
It's
No,
a matter of
most
they
the
went through
functions
that slogging through
Plasma.
that mud pit that GNOME hasn't done yet. I mean, if GNOME really wants to modernize, they're going to have to go through pretty much an entire code rewrite like KDE went through. And it's just, it's not currently in their schedule to do that, and that's their choice. It's just a matter of the paradigms that KDE and GNOME were originally written on don't function in the modern sense. KDE broke down and said, okay, we're going to have to do this rewrite. It's going to hurt. And it did, but
it did hurt,
come
yes.
through on the other side. And it's something that GNOME is going to have to, at some point, do if they want to reach the stage of being a modern desktop.
But I think Nate is 100% right. Sorry, when he said that the desktop has got to be careful and it's got to make sure that it's relevant and poignant, because how much longer, and I don't know if this is going to stretch, how much longer before we all end up with this? I don't know if you can see it properly, but that's Samsung Dex. And that very soon will be running Ubuntu. So why do I need a computer when I can have my phone connected to a widescreen monitor and just do everything I need to do on my phone? Okay, I know it's limited in its computing powers, but the stuff you've got today, the phones you've got today are so much more powerful than the computers of 15 years ago. So all you guys running your single core processor with Arch Linux on it using 300K of RAM, why? Just get a phone.
Yeah, but Zeb, you're not going to be able to do on a phone the things that you need to do, whether you're a content developer or you know what I'm talking about.
At the moment,
it's computers.
Look at the specs on the new iPad Pros, the top of the line iPad Pros. They have the computing power to do all of that processing, the video compiling, everything that we can currently do on these desktops.
But will it be
iPad Pro?
Bionic is one serious chip.
I'm not
the
saying
ARM,
it's
the ARM chips that they have in those things have all the ability that we have in our desktops.
Right. I'm not saying it's not going to get there someday, but the thing is there's still a side to this that how many times I've heard desktop PCs are dead or they're dying. The truth of the matter is it's desktop PCs that are creating this stuff right now. And that is going to come to a point where you're going to have virtual keyboards and all those sorts of things. But there's still going to be a side to desktop computers, whether it's gaming or whatever, because people still it's like having a muscle car in your garage is the best analogy you can have. It's a work in progress. You're always changing things. You're always wanting to upgrade. And that's where desktops are still always going to be there. Now, will the phones replace computers potentially in a certain portion of the marketplace? Probably someday, because the smaller and the more you could do with them, absolutely, because the average person who wants to browse and do their banking or whatever else are going to be able to do those things. But when it comes into if you want to game on it or if you want to create or design buildings on it and things like that, I don't know that phones will get there, at least not anytime soon, doing that kind of thing.
The new iPad Pro can do all those things. The only thing limiting it at this point is a lack of software that can actually utilize all the power of the hardware that's in that thing.
And you're exactly. I would think that thermal issues with the iPad Pro. I mean, if you're cranking that much kind of power, using that much processing power I don't see an iPad Pro being able to sustain those temperatures. It's going to be
new ARM
surprised.
chips run cool enough that you don't run into those issues.
ARM CPUs are more efficient than x86-64 processors. However, as you were saying, you're going to have a lack of software support. However, the nice thing here is, at least for Android tablets that are going to come out, like the Galaxy Tab S4, if you have code that is able to be cross-compiled, then you can literally do that, release an Android app, and boom, you got your software support right there. You're good. And if you can't do that, then you can either A, make your own app, or B, there is actually an app called Automate that only is available for Android that essentially allows you to make your own apps and run them right there on Android and do whatever you want. It's more like scripting, but close enough.
Well, the days of Tony Stark are coming, and it's not meant to be a joke. It's the truth, where you're all of a sudden go Jarvis, you touch it on a table, and all of a sudden you got this virtual screen in front of you, and you're moving things around. I mean, that to some extent, there's some of that already starting here. I still think it's years off before we really see this take hold. And yes, you are right, Dave. I'm not arguing the point. We are on that direction, but for today, I still think that we have to deal with what's in front of us. Now, one of the common complaints always about Windows is, or Linux is, compared to Windows, is you can't game on it. But think about how many things you can do on Linux that you can't even touch on Windows. Just what you could do with it for installing software, changing the look of it. You don't like that menu, you put a different menu in. You want a dock in, you put a dock. I mean, you can't.
Yeah, but Joe, how many millions of Windows users out there give a damn about whether they can put a dock on or whether they can change the colors of the windows? All they want is a machine that will start up and give them Facebook and give them Instagram and give them Snapchat and give them access to a browser. You're probably talking less than 10% of the computer users in the world that are content creators.
Well, that's right. But see, that's the point, is the people complaining about, well, the reason I don't go to Linux because I can't game on it. That's that.
You can.
Percent.
You can game.
I know you can, because I game on it all the time.
Yeah.
But the point is it's there's trade-offs for everything. And even when you look at Mac OS, now here there's a video I could post it in our Zoom chat here for you guys to look at, but it was done by a young man where he built a machine for, I don't know if it was his mother or whatever, but basically he said, why should I spend $5,000 or $7,000 on a Mac when I could build a PC and put Mac OS on it? Yeah, I'll take a couple little hurdles to do, but he did, and he said it runs better than the $7,000 machine. So it's pretty much, the hardware is still the same. It's just what they
honestly,
do with software.
What keeps most people, I feel, from switching from Windows or from Mac to Linux is just the way they perceive Linux. They perceive it as being difficult. Yeah, they perceive it as being difficult. I'll give a great example, for instance. Before I started on Linux, I thought Linux was insecure. And boy, was I wrong. Like, when I was educated about how secure Linux actually was, I was blown away. And there are not everybody's going to care so much about their security. Okay. But knowing that a company is not going to spy on you 24/7 just because they developed the operating system on your computer is reassuring. And not only that, knowing that I can do everything on my computer, everything that I can do on a Windows computer, that's good. And if I go up to most other people and I say, hey, try this, you'll be able to do everything that you can do on your Windows computer. Most likely, it'll be faster. Oh, and hey, a lot of these apps that you have, either there's a Linux version of it, there's something like it that's good enough, or you can run it through Wine. And
But if you're a gamer, you still can't run some AAA games.
That number is decreasing, though.
Of course, yeah. But you said that you can do anything you wanted to on Linux that you can do on Windows. No, you can't.
Right. The only thing I have found so far that I cannot do on Linux that I can do on Windows is run Fortnite. That is it.
Okay, run. What's the one that EB's having a problem with? Is it War Thunder?
Warframe.
Yeah, Warframe. Rocco, what's your favourite? Is it Battlefield or something?
Battlefield. You can't run Battlefield.
You can't run those on. Okay, I know it's coming. But you have to be
run those
very
in Proton.
careful when you say that you can do everything you want on Linux that you can on Windows. 'cause
That
you
also
can't.
is
Let me rephrase
subjective.
that then. I can do everything I want.
Right.
Yeah.
Very
There's
subjective.
a simple
So-
one word answer to it if you want to run those games on a Microsoft deal without having to run Windows. It's called Xbox.
Yeah, but then not everybody can afford to pay £450 for an Xbox.
Not everybody wants an
Yeah, but
Xbox.
you got Windows PC. I mean, the same thing.
Yeah, but you've already got your Windows PC, so why would you want to switch that to Linux and then go out and spend 450 quid on an Xbox?
No.
Remember, Zeb, the only game that matters is Euro Truck Simulator.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. But then, we're not talking about that. We were talking about a blanket statement that everything you need to do on Windows, you can do on Linux. So, but Thomas qualified that everything he needs to do. But I'm a very simple Linux user. As long as I can get a desktop, a browser, OBS, NVENC, and ETS, I'm set. That's it. I'm done.
Photon's still in its infancy, so sooner or later, other big companies like EA with their Origin client, they're going to port over, and then Battlefield 4 does run on Linux now. It just needs a lot of work to get it working.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But sooner or later, those companies are going to jump on board as well, because they're going to want that slice of the pie added to their existing portfolio.
Let's see how big of an impact Valve can make first, especially with Proton.
I think they
It
already
depends
have.
on
I think
it depends on how easy it
a
is.
very clear message into the community there.
Which
companies are not going to jump on board if they have to rewrite their games to work with both Linux and Windows. But they might jump on board if, like you said, Silent, if Proton starts moving forward and growing, and there's an easier way and a more affordable way to get the Linux user.
Maybe they can start with Proton and then move on to native games down the road.
Yeah, Proton is moving forward. It is. Like you can go right now on Steam's whitelisted website, and they have far more games that are known working on that whitelist now. We know how to get a bunch of other games that were working.
Well,
and
the other issue too is Vulkan needs to get feature parity with DirectX 12, and it's still not quite there. That's holding a lot of things back.
But it's getting there.
Yeah.
It's getting there.
And because it's open source, it's just a matter of time. So, and the same thing with Proton. It's just a matter of time before we know it, we could have a distro out there somewhere that has Proton built into it, and somehow you can run a Windows app just like you can on Windows, as well as all these other Linux apps that we have, and snaps and Flatpaks, etc. ad nauseum.
Well, think about this: Microsoft being Microsoft and wanting a part of every pie. Somebody mentioned pie earlier. The reality of it is what's going to stop them from saying, "Hey, if we can get them to buy games from our app store and let them run them on Linux, which is integrated in our system, it could work the other way around too."
Yeah, but I don't think that would pull in the Linux user.
No.
Yeah.
Like for me, I dual boot Windows. Everybody knows that.
They want to run that typically they couldn't run on Linux, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It might fill the void.
I dual boot Windows just because of games like Battlefield are not available.
Same as that. I dual boot because of the audio software I use is not available on Linux.
Yep.
And for things like Battlefield.
I should dual boot, but I can't now because I was an idiot and wiped my entire system. But oh well.
I do that every 6 months. Why can't you do boot?
So when I went and installed Linux on my system, I didn't know it at the time, but there was a BIOS update, and I needed to install the BIOS update. But because the old BIOS I'm running does not allow me to boot from USB unless I do some weird crazy stuff that I was only able to get it to do once, and that was when I installed Linux, I can no longer reinstall my OS. Like the only way I can reinstall anything is if I go and how, like for instance, Ubuntu has that thing where, oh, hey, you're running, say, Ubuntu 16.04. Let's upgrade you to 18.04. That thing. I can do that. But that's about it until I get my BIOS fixed. Maybe.
What kind of computer doesn't have allow you to boot from USB? I mean,
Acer Nitro 5.
Acer Nitro 2005?
No, it's actually like a 2018 model. It's just that part of the BIOS is broken.
Oh,
yeah.
You can't reflash it.
If
Isn't
I'm
there
gonna
the hardware, that flash updater thing that that everyone's pushing now? I can't remember what it's called, but I know Dell and Lenovo are on that.
It does not have a flash updater built into the UEFI. It does not have one.
No, but if you download the latest firmware BIOS update or whatever, and you know, you can't even get into it to do it that way.
I downloaded the update, and so since I can't do the USB,
a separate machine on a flash drive, so you can't even boot into a USB to flash it from a flash drive. Is what you're saying?
No, I can't boot via USB at all. Like what I'm going to have to do based on what my friends and I have figured out is, so I'm running an NVMe drive, and the vast majority of computers in my area are running at most a 6th gen processor, so they can't use my drive. So what I'm going to have to do is go get another SATA hard drive that's running Windows 10, because it's going to have to be 10 because of issues. And I'm going to have to take my NVMe drive out, put in the Windows 10 SATA drive, and boot from that, like force my computer to boot from that, and then download the BIOS updater tool, update my BIOS, take out the SATA drive, put in the NVMe drive, boot from that just to like get it going and good, somehow wipe the old Windows 10 drive.
The BIOS doesn't. The BIOS recognizes your NVMe drive, correct?
Yes.
You can't put the image file for your BIOS on the NVMe drive, then boot into the BIOS and just load the file from the NVMe drive?
It does not have that built into the BIOS, because apparently Acer is an idiot.
That's very strange.
Oh,
I've never come across a BIOS that you could not load an image
The way you
file
could
from a
force
hard
it
drive.
booting from a USB is just to take your NVMe drive, so there's no drives in. So it's forcing it to look for a bootloader anywhere. And UEFI will look for the bootloader anywhere and find one.
Did you say you bought this machine in 2018?
Yes, I bought this machine in September.
So take it back, not fit for purpose.
Some of the older
So I tried contacting Acer technical support for another issue I have with my laptop, where occasionally, this actually happened during a stream a couple of weeks ago, my laptop will just randomly completely freeze up and will not respond at all. And if I go to force shutdown and reboot, it will not post.
So which shop did you buy it from?
Best Buy. But because I've installed Linux, I avoided my warranty.
Rubbish.
Now here's the interesting part. Here's the interesting part here. If I install Windows, they will honor the warranty. But I can't install Windows to make them honor the warranty because I can't boot via USB.
Can't you clear the BIOS on the motherboard though? You'd have to require opening the machine, but can't you clear it?
So I can clear.
Just set the jumper, take the battery out.
Yeah.
Done.
Some of those batteries are soldered on, in fairness.
Right. My battery is not soldered on. And I do actually have to dislodge that battery whenever my laptop does freeze up. I have to dislodge it for like 2 minutes to clear some memory, and then it boots up perfectly fine.
Well, that's the point. Take the battery out and leave it sit a good half hour and see if it'll clear the BIOS, and then put it back in. And if that still doesn't work, then you may have actually bricked part of your BIOS then.
Thing is, though, that shouldn't be anything that I have to do.
That's how you would do it on any other motherboard too. If you want to clear it, if you don't have a BIOS, if they don't have a jumper or don't have some of them actually have a clear button on them or whatever, the old school way of clearing it was pulling the battery out, tapping the power button to clear any kind of power out of it, and let it sit a good half an hour, and then put the battery back in, the CMOS battery, and it theoretically should reset itself unless there's something else going on still.
You may end up having to hold the power button down for a minute to make sure that you drain all the CMOS energy out.
Right. Well, when I contacted Acer technical support with the freezing up problem, they basically just had me dislodge the CMOS battery for like 2 minutes, and that cleared it out enough, apparently.
Well, if it's doing
And
that,
then-
you may have a chance to clear your BIOS then. Just pull your battery out for a good half hour, clear the power out of it, and see if that works. And it might
as
take 2
far
or
as-
3 attempts to do that, but try it 2 or 3 times.
It's just, I shouldn't be having these issues, you know?
But as Dave said, you should be able to put the BIOS image on the NVMe.
Yeah,
then
I
we'll
agree.
boot up
And
into the
I'm
BIOS.
hoping that this BIOS update will give me the ability to do that. But
No, any BIOS, no matter how
Yeah.
old, if you, I mean, I have a 2004 HP laptop, and the BIOS in that, I can access an
Load from
image
file.
file for a BIOS update off of the hard drive that's installed that it recognizes.
Right. It's just, I didn't see that anywhere in my BIOS. I dug through the entire thing and I saw nothing.
But
Now,
I have actually come across that problem with not detecting drives in older BIOSes or the first UEFI motherboards, where it the USB stick or the drive you want to read the BIOS file from has to be ext FAT16 or FAT32. It won't recognize anything other. So I have come across that problem, but I'm talking about really old motherboards. The first UEFIs or something like that.
Right.
You couldn't experience that in 2018. That's just ridiculous.
Right. And my BIOS UEFI, I don't even see it anywhere in the settings of that, in that menu to go fix that.
Normally
So,
on the front page.
right. It's like, so the front page for me is literally just like a system's like what's going on layout. Like, oh, hey, this is your hardware, yada, yada, this is time, etc. You know, basic stuff. And then every other page is, you know, everything else, and I see nothing.
Information in the Zoom chat for your computer. I'll do some research for you this week or whatever and see if we can find something out.
Yeah,
what right.
model?
Give me a second because I got to dig through to find it.
All right,
Yeah,
while
we can
you're
take
finding
to the
that,
Telegram group.
yeah, while you're finding it, we need to pick a distro for next week and get our last
Mm.
word in.
Deep
So, deep in.
Yeah.
Something that's not GNOME.
All right.
Deep in is Debian based, so why not? You know.
I vote Neptune, the one that didn't get through last time.
Yeah, Neptune's a good version.
What is it? Zep?
Neptune.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Neptune OS.
Yeah, I could go for Neptune.
Oh, by the way, Rocco, I'm doing a reverse role at work. I have to run Windows 10 at work, and I'm actually using Kdenlive Live on Windows 10 to do some video editing. So I haven't tried rendering yet. Apparently it has issues with rendering, but apparently it runs the CPU very high unless you turn it off and restart. I haven't done that yet, but hopefully this week I'll get a chance. So,
All right, we got 2 picks this week: Neptune or Deep In.
I vote for Neptune.
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 Yeah, Neptune.
Neptune.
I could go for that too, I guess.
I looked at
I've got a picture of planets.
Well, the good thing is, there's always next week for Deep In. So,
Yeah. Well, let's
all right.
well, now we'll do Neptune now, Deep in next week. How's that?
Neptune OS will be the distro challenge for this week. And we are past time, so that's going to wrap it up. Thomas, we will help you in the Telegram group with your issues.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
What's your last word, dude?
Let's see. DrugOS 7.4.1 Beta 1 was released this week. Finally. Other than that, thanks for having me on, guys. Thanks for your help with my stupid laptop. Other than that, Neptune OS. Never heard of it before. This is going to be fun. Hoorah.
All right. Allie, last word?
Yeah, been a fun time. Yeah, can't wait for next week. I'm going to try this Neptune out, see what it's all about. Never heard of it myself either, so this should be fun as well.
Go, last word.
Well, thanks again for having us this week. And as DT says, Linux does have to hurt a little bit, and we certainly were in a lot of pain tonight, I guess. But till next
Yeah.
week.
All right, hold on. Okay. Silent, last word.
Thank you for having me on. Always a pleasure. I'm looking forward to Neptune. I've run it before, so I know what to expect.
Well, it's always nice having your opinion on Silent.
Thank you very much.
All right, PZ, last word.
Catch the next episode of Destination Linux that we recorded on Friday night. It's going to be an absolute blast. Thank you very much for putting these on every Saturday night / Sunday morning. It is the highlight of my week. And all of my distro hopping now will be done on VM because I'm not installing to bare metal anymore. I've got 5 OSs that I'm going to try and use for the rest of the year to see how it all goes. And I need to become the VM expert. So I'm cured.
You're never cured, Zeb.
We'll see.
All right. Colin, last word.
Well, I'm going to pop on over to my rocket and take a trip to Neptune and see how we go for this week.
You so stole my thunder.
And we shall see how we go with that one. And I've never used Neptune before, something that's a new one. And thank you for putting this on, Rocco. It's always great every week. Enjoy it. Like somebody said just before, it's the highlight of my Zeb. It's the highlight of my week too. Coming here and chatting, it's great. So thanks, Rocco.
Yep, it's pretty awesome. It's my highlight of the week. So, Zeb, can you get the Neptune link?
Yeah, sure, no problems at all.
Tyler, last word.
Fun being on the show. Looking forward to trying Neptune. And by the way, I've been running Arch.
You run Arch, I know. Too
Love
bad.
the name. I
Too
just
bad
love
your camera doesn't know that, huh? Christopher, last word.
Thanks for having me on. Sorry I didn't contribute much. Pop OS has been a fun experience, although I think thinking about it, I don't. If I ever got a System 76 laptop, I think I would install my own distro on it, and even instead of doing that. But anyway, looking forward to doing Neptune OS. Thanks for having me on. Remember to press the like button. It's just important. So,
Like that
yeah.
smash button.
Right.
Yeah.
Is that Michael?
All right, Dave, Michael, Dave, last word.
My name is Dave, and I run Arch. No, thank you, Rocco. I just have to mirror what everybody else says. This is the highlight of my week. So thank you.
Awesome. Climby?
Yeah, same here. Look forward to this every Saturday. I've heard some really good things about Neptune, that even though it's Debian stable, that uses updated kernel, some updated software packages, a little bit like MX in that regard, but it's KDE. And so I'm definitely looking forward to it. I'm getting a little sick of Gnome. So
Nice. Nate, last word.
Well, thank you. I only just stumbled upon you recently, and I'm glad you encouraged me to join you. It's been fun.
Yeah, welcome, Nate.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Yep, it's awesome to have you. I put your link in your for your blog post in the chat, and
Flattering.
thank you for your service, man.
Yeah, thank
no
you
problem.
for your service, 100%.
Paul,
Yeah,
last word.
Good job.
KDE for the win.
So you'll do this distro challenge, right?
I will.
All right, Scott, last word.
Oh, well, thanks very much. As always, awesome show every week. Love coming here and being a part of this. Really liked the Pop OS. I think people should give that a try, make their own decisions on that. And even though I'm not a big fan of the Roman god of the seas, I'm definitely looking forward to trying Neptune.
There you go. All right, Michael, last word.
Yeah, a couple of things. First off, if you love your life, don't try Gentoo.
I resent that.
And secondly, as Mr. Tanel always say, don't forget to smash that like button. And lastly, as always, Team Green for the win.
Right?
Hoorah.
Hoorah.
Team Red.
Team Red.
All right.
What team is Intel? What team is Intel?
Blue.
What team am
Team
I on?
Blue.
Oh, Team Blue, okay.
Team Nowhere.
Black and blue.
Noah, last word.
I never got the Wi-Fi working on the Linux partitions on my laptop.
From last week, you mean?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what, Noah. Why don't you talk to us in the Telegram group, and we will try to help you out. Okay.
Okay, I'll see about that.
All right. All right. That's going to wrap it up for us this week. It was a wonderful time talking to everybody. I appreciate each and every one of you coming along. Join us in the Telegram group at t.me/telegram. No, t.me telegram/Big Daddy Linux. And we will see you all next week.
See y'all.
Bye.
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 Have a great time.
Take care, everyone.
Good
See
night,
ya.
all.